It's been 2 weeks since Stoneshard's most recent update of Beasts and Sages. And with this update, we got caves, new consumables, gear, and the focus point of today's video, the Arcanist. So welcome to the channel. I'm okmall, and today I'll be covering everything I know about the Arcanist so far. The abilities of the Arcanist skill tree offer a wide range of utility for which you can build your character. With skills like Wormhole and Dimensional Shift, the enemy is at your beck and call. Getting chased down by an enemy, wormhole them into another. Getting shot by an archer, then take advantage of Dimensional Shift and swap the archer with a melee fighter and take the wind out of the sails of that archer. The Arcanist skill tree also offers you a couple of defensive spells as well. Ether Shield, for example, will decrease your damage taken, as well as your resistance, and it destroys all physical magical projectiles. Stasis can take you or the enemy out of the fight for 3 turns, possibly preventing your untimely demise. But it doesn't end there. The Arcanist can also summon mana crystals and a phantasm. The mana crystal, while weak defensively, can fire off bolts of ether at the enemy from range. The phantasm, on the other hand, takes the appearance of the caster and can both tank and deal massive damage to enemies. So with all that said, let's go ahead and break down all the Arcanist skills. Now let's take a deep dive into the Arcanist skills, starting with all of the actives first. So to begin with, we have Wormhole here. If you guys notice, this one applies to target with Wormhole for 3 turns and marks the tile beneath it. When the effect expires or is removed, it teleports the target to the marked tile and deals 5 arcane damage. It's not the strongest spell and does require a little finesse to make it hit harder. Here it says, if the marked tile is occupied, it'll teleport the target to the closest empty tile and deal 11 arcane damage with 60% chance of stunning it. While Wormhole is active, the spell won't go on cooldown and can be used again without spending any energy to remove the effect from the target, and the spell can't be used on giant or stationary targets. So again, that means you can't use it on the bosses like Troll, Manticore, anything that's really massive. You can, however, use it on a bear. So that's awesome. So the way this works, I'm going to use Varen as an example here. We're going to put Wormhole on him. And you'll notice that's 1 turn, 2 turns. On 3 turns, he gets teleported back, deals very little arcane damage. Now, typically what you're going to want to do is combine that with Dimensional Shift, which we'll talk about here in a second. All right, so Wormhole. And then if you, personally, I wouldn't use the boulder right off the bat, because if you use a boulder right off the bat, what's going to happen, he's going to push this enemy closer to you. Preferably, just fall back. Then you get Wormhole, so it doesn't push him any closer. And then he'll fall back or get teleported back, dealing more damage, into 12 damage to him that time. The other option that you can do with Wormhole, use Wormhole, teleport to swap you guys. Swap. Then step here. It won't do any damage to us, but will do damage to the enemy that gets teleported into us. Another quick tip you can do with Wormhole is utilize Claw Traps or Cow Traps, whichever. So you're going to cast it, then you're going to swap places, and then you're going to use Claw Trap. And you'll notice he took damage from the Claw Trap, so it only does the Claw Trap damage. Next skill we're going to be covering is called Dimensional Shift. Now, you already seen a little bit of what this skill can do, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth. It starts off with a base range of 5. It marks 2 tiles and then teleports, swapping their position. This will deal 2 arcane damage to both targets for each tile of distance between them, with 80% chance to confuse them over 3 turns or daze for 2 turns. This will also apply both targets with negative 5.5 weapon damage, negative 5.5 accuracy, negative 5.5 fumble for 3 turns, and this effect can stack twice. The spell can't be used on giant or stationary targets. It's very similar to how Wormhole is. It doesn't harm the caster. It does not apply us with penalties as well. And as mentioned, very simple. You just target yourself, target the enemy. You have swapped, dealing damage to the enemy. And as mentioned, it does deal more damage the further away the target is. So if you went full on perception, have your rage as max as possible. Let's say you throw a crystal down, and then you have an enemy at the very max, and then you swap both of those positions. It hits really hard, especially if it crits. And I'll go ahead and show that in action. Now, as you can see from that video footage, you can really hit hard with this as a single tile attack, or if you had 2 enemies, which I don't know how you would have 2 enemies at the far ends of each other and swap both enemies around, potentially critting them both at the same time for over 200 damage each. The next skill up is called Schism. This one starts off with a base range of 5. This will deal 10 arcane damage to all enemies within a 5x5 tile area, except for the central tile. So if you're going to use that, you'll notice the central tile does nothing. So anybody standing in the central takes no damage. This one has a 40% chance to stagger or immobilize all affected targets, has a 100% chance to knock back targets that are adjacent to the center, and pull targets that are one tile away from the center. The spell does not harm the caster, aside from arcane damage. So, for instance, if I do it to myself, I won't get moved around, but I'll take damage. So if you guys look at this image here, this is a perfect example. Everything adjacent to the center tile will push out, and everything on the outer edges pulls in. So if I was to do it here, it would push them out. And then if I do it here, it's going to pull them into this tile. And that it works with everything. So long as he's on the outside edge, he will be pulled in towards the center. And he pulls in. The next skill up is going to be Ether Shield. Think of this one very similar to how the Geomancy has Stone Armor. It's basically the same thing, more or less does the same stuff. This one will apply us with 32 control res, 32 move res, 32 bleed res, and negative 16 damage taken. It also replenishes energy for 33% of the damage that we receive. Destroys all physical and magical projectiles. So any ranger or mage that try to fire at us from a distance, nothing. It will not get through this shield. So long as you can keep Ether Shield active, those rangers won't pose a threat, and you can just worry about the melee classes. This will also include thrown items, and as I mentioned, it prevents their damage and effects. And then colliding with targets will also deal that target arcane damage to them. The only thing I could possibly think of outside of pushing enemies into yourself would possibly be battering ram, but I don't know if this effect actually works. All right, so let's say I try battering ram on old Varen boy. Let's see if he takes arcane damage. Apparently that doesn't work. The other option would be to do this. Put Schism and push myself into him. Ether Shield. There it is, crushing. Because I believe we used, yeah, Ether Shield did 10 crushing damage. But I also took arcane damage because I used Schism on myself. So that whole, bumping into him thing, it's kind of weird. I'm not really a big fan. I think they should change it. The other thing that's special about Ether Shield is that when you teleport, it'll increase the duration by 3 turns up to 6. And grant all strikes and shots +1 arcane damage for 4 turns. Now this can stack up to 2 times, which is not too bad. The next skill we'll cover is Stasis. This one applies the target with Stasis for 3 turns. Now this one will give you +200% move resistance and negative 50% damage taken. You're granted immunity to all attack types except for Arcane, immunity to all effects except for Wormhole, and you can't perform any actions. This one will prevent death and freezes all cooldowns and the duration of all active effects. When the effect is expired or removed, it'll deal 100% of the arcane damage to the target received over the course of stasis to a 3x3 area around it, with an 80% chance to daze all affected targets. Teleporting a target affected by stasis will remove stasis effect and double the chance to daze. The spell can't be used on giant target. So let's go ahead and swap me and Varen. It'll make him upset. Let's go ahead and use Stasis on ourselves. 0 damage taken. Wait again. 0 damage taken. And of course, he gets a free hit once it expires. Next example, we're going to apply Varen with Stasis. And then watch all the damage that he takes over the course of Stasis. And then when he's done taking damage, he took another 19. Now, it could be a lot higher, obviously. It's just our skills right now don't deal that much damage. But then, yes, if there's enemies around when the stasis got cleared off, it will deal additional damage and had a high chance to daze them. The next skill we'll go ahead and cover is called Mana Crystal. This one starts off with 4 range. Now, this one summons a Mana Crystal on the targeted tile, which will persist for 8 turns. This one says each turn, the crystal will shoot a bolt of ether at the enemy with the lowest health within 4 tiles. It'll deal 10 arcane damage with a base of 62 accuracy, 11 armor penetration, 8 crit chance, and 125% crit efficiency. This one says the offensive capabilities and maximum health of the crystal change dynamically depending on the caster's stats. The crystal doesn't move and is immune to all effects except for stasis and wormhole. When teleported, the crystal will shoot 3 bolts at random enemies within 4 tiles, and it's distributed evenly amongst them. So to see this one in action, let's summon a mana crystal. On the first turn, it does no attacks, so keep that in mind. Wait a turn. The poor accuracy is going to make it miss a lot, but there's 5 damage as a base amount of damage. Now, if you were to swap places, we summon up one of these phantoms, put that down, and then do a swap. You'll notice 3 hits, evenly distributed. So 2 here, 1 over there. Now, if you had enough cooldown reduction, you could summon 2 crystals, swap their positioning, and it'll fire off 3 arcane bolts per crystal. The next skill we're going to cover is called Phantasm. This one has a base range of 2. Very, very short. This one summons a Phantasm on the targeted tile, which will persist for 8 turns. Each turn, the Phantasm deals 26 arcane damage to a random adjacent enemy with 67% accuracy, 12% armor penetration, 17 crits, 145% crit efficiency. The offensive capabilities and the maximum health of the Phantom change dynamically depending on the caster's stats. The Phantasm can also move within 2 tiles of its summoning location, or if you're teleporting and swapping these around, 2 tiles from that location. It's also immune to all effects except for stasis and wormhole, and replenishes health upon taking arcane damage. The Phantasm also has 3 abilities: Arcane Tether, which will pull enemies in, Mana Siphon, which steals energy, and Consonance, which will prolong its duration. Teleporting with Phantasm will instantly refresh the cooldowns on those 3 abilities. So if we take the Phantasm, we put him down, the very first move, he does get a chance to hit. Unlike the Mana Crystal, which whenever you summon it, it doesn't get a free hit on that very first turn. I don't know if that's as intended or a bug, but there you have it. I'll put a crystal right there. We'll go ahead and swap. Instantly refreshing the cooldowns, and it gets to hit again. If we can do this one more time, swap again. Instantly refreshing cooldowns. The Mana Crystal gets off 3 shots as well. For this part of the video, we're going to be covering the passives available for the Arcanist. Now, most of these passives, obviously, we can't really see them in action, but we can talk about them. Arcane Might, for example, says that when you deal arcane damage with strikes, shots, or spells, it'll grant you 2% additional accuracy, -2 fumble chance, -2 backfire chance, and +2 crit chance, as well as +2 miracle chance for 4 turns. This entire effect stacks 3 times. So you could get 6 accuracy, -6 fumble, -6 backfire chance, +6 crit, and +6 miracle chance for those 4 turns. To add to this, teleporting will grant +1 range to the Arcanist spells for 4 turns, with a -15 backfire damage change for 2 turns. The next passive up is directly related to Wormhole. The first part says that when Wormhole expires or is removed after being applied to the character specifically, it'll replenish 33% health and energy lost over the course of the effect. When Wormhole expires or is removed after being applied to an enemy, this will deal additional arcane damage equal to 33% of the damage they received over the course of the effect. Next passive up will be Transcendental Anchoring. This one says that teleporting enemies will burn 10% of their maximum energy and replenish the same amount of energy to the character. The second part of this is what makes this passive really, really awesome. Using Dimensional Shift on characters or entities summoned by the Arcanist reduces the spell's cooldown by 2 turns. So with this particular passive and a very, very low cooldowns, you could basically use Dimensional Shift every single turn. The next passive is going to be Astral Tides. This one says that if Schism or Arcane Tether, which is the skill that Phantom uses, successfully knocks back or pulls the target, applies that target with -10 magic resistance and -10 arcane resistance for 3 turns. This effect can stack twice. If these spells fail to knock the target or pull the target, it'll also deal 5 arcane damage instead. After that, we have Entropy Flare. This one says that teleporting a Mana Crystal will grant it +1 range, +25% damage, +10 accuracy, and +25% damage reflection for 3 turns. Now this effect can stack twice. Now each strike received by entities summoned with the Arcanist will also deal arcane damage to the attacker for 10% of the entity's maximum health. After that, we have Ether Harmony. This one says once per 10 turns, producing a miracle with mana crystal will instantly refresh the spell's cooldowns, and then grant it negative 30 energy cost during the next use. It also states that each entity currently summoned with the Arcanist will grant you negative 5% backfire damage change and plus 10% magical power. And then the last passive here in the tree is Beyond the Veil. This one says that when stasis expires or is removed after being applied to the character, it no longer harms them, and also activates intangibility for 1 turn, making them untargetable by strikes, shots, or spells. Now, one of my viewers uses the stasis skill in conjunction with dual wielding. Essentially what they do is they will buff up, they'll go into a group of enemies, pop stasis, get surrounded by said enemies, and then in the very next turn when stasis is off, they'll then use whirlwind and then attack all the enemies and usually wipe the floor with every single one of them. Very unique combo. I love the thought with that. Sounds amazing. The second part of stasis is that while active on the character, it'll grant the effect plus 50% Arcanist power and 25% miracle chance and prevent it from freezing your cooldowns. So your cooldowns will still count down. The next thing I want to cover real quick is this is all of the active skills at a glance with Yana, no equipment and no stats. This is everything at base. I'm going to pair this with a couple other screenshots and show you what the difference is when you put different points into different stats. This here's all the passives. For my tests, the passives do not change at all. They all stay the same. Now here's the difference between base Phantasm and Mana Crystal versus 30 agility with Mana Crystal and Phantasm. Now the most notable differences here are going to be backfire chance. You see it's 8% here versus 38. We've decreased our backfire chance by 30%. Now, one very important call out with the accuracy, it's not increasing accuracy because of agility specifically. It's increasing accuracy because of the backfire reduction. So the lower your backfire chances, the higher your accuracy becomes. This will stack with equipment, passives, and spells. So I have to thank my Twitch viewer Faber for actually pointing that out to us, because I honestly had no clue. I just thought it was an agility modifier. No idea it had to do with backfire chains. The next comparison I have is 30 perception versus the base. And this one does a couple of things. Perception is going to increase our range. So first and foremost, anything that has a range is going to get increased. So that's 8 up from 4. This one's 5 up to 9. 5 up to 9, same idea. 3 up to 7. So you're gaining about 4 additional range with 30 perception. The other thing that perception does for us is also increase the armor penetration. We have 70% here, 90%. And if we look at that, it's about a 30% increase in armor penetration. The other thing perception does that's unique is for Mana Crystal and Phantasm. This is another one. It'll add 30% armor penetration here, and that's up from 11. And then it'll also increase the crit chance by about 20%. So from 8 base to 28. And the crit efficiency modifier stays the same. For Phantasm, that it looks like 50% armor penetration up from 12 armor penetration. Crit chance again increases by 20 all the way up to 37. So to recap, perception is range and armor penetration primarily. And the last modifier to our skills is going to be willpower. That's to be expected though. Now willpower does by far the most changes across the board in terms of how much more it increases our skills and how much more benefit we gain. So to begin with, willpower is always going to decrease 2 things, energy and cooldowns. If we look at Wormhole, its base goes from 16 energy to 11, and its cooldowns decrease by 2. The other big changes to most of these is that it increases the damage our arcane damage will deal. So from 5 to 7 on Wormhole, and then from 11 to 14. It'll also increase the chances to stun. So you look at 78%, up from 60%. Then we have Dimensional Shift. We have 3 arcane damage here, up from 2, with 104% chance to confuse, up from 80. This will also affect the negatives. You'll notice here applies all targets with negative 15 weapon damage, up from 5.5. As well as the accuracy and the fumble also get a negative 15 and 15. Schism, same idea. Deals 13 arcane damage and a 5x5, up from 10. And then 40% chance, 52% chance to stagger, up from 40, and 130% chance to knock back, up from 100%. Ether Shield also goes up. Now this is not correct. They've recently changed it. I'll show you that now. So here's Ether Shield currently at 32 and 16. And here it is at full max, 60 and 25. 4 arcane damage whenever you do the teleport. So you can definitely tell Ether Shield got a huge nerf Used to be 8 arcane damage that can stack twice, so it's dealing 16 arcane damage. Insane. Plus the negative 35 damage taken. Now, the two skills that don't really get affected with willpower are going to be Mana Crystal and Phantasm. They still do the same amount of damage, 10 arcane, 25 and 25, or is that 26 and 26? And those are only going to be affected by arcane damage percentage, not magical power. And the last one is Stasis. Stasis is basically the same, except for now it deals 130 versus 100% of the arcane damage dealt to the target, and a 104% chance of daze versus 80. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at real quick is that equipment also positively affects a lot of these skills as well. And right now, Dimensional Shift only deals 3 arcane damage, so that's at 130%. But equipped all of this gear, we're up to 175%, and we're at 4 arcane damage. Now this one here gives us also magical power as well as 5% Arcanist. We slap that one on, it's still going to be at 4 arcane damage. I think we could probably push that up a little bit higher if I put on a couple of books. I could be wrong though. It's still 4 arcane, so we'd probably have to be closer to 200% before we see 5 arcane damage on that skill. The next thing we pay close attention to is the chance to confuse enemies goes from 104 all the way up to 140% chance just by having additional gear and increasing our magical power. I do believe that's all about magical power that increases that chance. But the negatives still are only affected directly by willpower. I already talked about Phantasm not getting a buff from magical power, so if I put all of this equipment on, you'll notice it always stays at that 26 arcane damage. But if we pick this stuff up, we already get a buff because of Yana from these 2 books. Now it has to be Yana because that's her trait. It'll increase Arcanist power by 12% at 6 per book. And then we look down, this one now goes up from 26 to 29. Put on things that do increase Arcanist power even more, we get up to 30. Because this one has, what, 5% Arcanist power. And if we look down through the line here, you'll notice 4 arcane damage there at 156% chance to confuse. We've got 10 arcane damage, 23 arcane damage, and 117% chance to stun. This one here will have 21 arcane damage, 78% chance to stagger, and 195% chance to knock targets back. Ether Shield can go up to 6 damage and stack twice. Phantasm again, 30 arcane, 80 accuracy with that 12 armor penetration, 28 crit, 189% crit efficiency. Seems like efficiency might be, something's changing crit efficiency. 160 crit, 165. The belt has 5% miracle potency, -5 backfire, and 5 magic resistance. I don't know which of these stats is doing us a more crit efficiency justice, but that's weird. It's gotta be from the miracle potency. It kind of makes sense, actually. All right, well, that's something to know. We'll also take a quick look at Stasis here with the current gear. This one will say if the effect expires or is removed, you'll deal 195% of the arcane damage that the target received over the course of the Stasis effect in a 3x3 tile with 156% chance of daze. Now that's 95% of the damage dealt. So if you did like 100 damage, you'd probably do another 95 damage. Pretty wild. And then lastly, we got the Mana Crystal. These are all the stats with the current loadout. So interesting stuff, and it's nice to know. All right, y'all. Hopefully, in today's video, I answered all your guys' questions and concerns when it comes to the brand new Arcanist tree. I tried to learn everything I could about the skills, the scaling, and provide some insights into ways that you can utilize these skills. So as per usual, if you found this video helpful in any way, please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and family, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye.